Now, the ultimate way to communicate would be what? If there was one ego state that you wanted to communicate to, what ego state would that be? The adult, right? I want to speak to the person who's rational, who's calm, who's planned, who's organized, who's mature. I want to come and talk to you about the client objective or the thing we're trying to achieve or the process we're trying to implement or the commitments or the execution or the task when you're the adult. And there's one very simple rule for all of this. It's called PRAT. P-R-A-T. And what it stands for is people respond as treated. What this helps us understand is something called the predictable transaction. And a predictable transaction is when one ego state interacts with another ego state and is intending to speak to that ego state. So I have a quick little story about a guy named Johnny. Johnny was about a 10-year-old kid. Johnny went to the park and he was eating a big bag of candy. This kid was gorging himself. 10 years old, or a glutton. Skittles and Smarties and chocolates and whatever the candy is. He's eating so much candy, he's got like a rainbow of like color dripping down on his white shirt. Looks like he's from the 60s or 70s. Grateful Dead t-shirt. And as he's pounding this candy down, there's this old man that goes to the park and is watching this young kid. Now, how many of you have ever wanted to parent another child? I do it all the time, by the way, because I'm a critical parent, right? How many of you have ever wanted to parent the parent? All the time, right? So this is one of these stories that the parent wasn't around to parent them, so the old man decides to say something. This old man watching this kid looks over at him and says, "Hey, kid, don't you know eating all that candy is bad for you? Bad for your teeth, your stomach, your digestion. You shouldn't be eating so much candy. I bet you if your parents were here, they wouldn't let you eat so much candy. In fact, you should take that bag of candy, you should put it in the garbage right now." Young Johnny pauses for a moment and looks up at this old man and says, "Hey, old man, you know my grandfather. He lived until he was 106 years old." Old man said, "Really, did he eat as much candy as you?" Young Johnny paused for another moment and said, "Nope, but he learned how to mind his fucking own business." Picked up his bag of candy and walked off. Now, if we come back to the rule of Pratt, people respond as treated, what ego state was the old man communicating out of? Critical parent, demanding, telling, authoritative rules, directive, interfering, controlling, finger wagging, right? Critical parent. How did he speak to the young kid? Did he speak to him like a parent? Did he speak to him like an adult? Or did he speak to him like a child? Like a child. Welcome to the most common transaction we see in all communication, which is what we call parent to child. Now, young Johnny was spontaneous child. Candy, free, boundless. That's the way I was describing it and building up the story, right? How did he respond? Angry child. And isn't this what it always looks like with you in your relationships? One person's telling, the other one's reacting. When you're an actual parent, right, this happens. Manager, leader to team member, client to you. And how do I communicate? I communicate through telling you. Put the bag of candy down. You shouldn't be eating so much candy. Now, what do you think the old man's going to walk away saying about the youth today? Right, he's going to say the youth today are cheeky, inappropriate, disrespectful, etc., etc. And guess what the old man's going to do? He's going to blame Johnny. He's going to say, this kid is going to go home, so you tell the story. He's going to tell the story to everyone. You should have seen this kid today. All right, I was in the park. This glutton is pounding candy down. Little bastard ended up saying this to me. But what if the old man said this? Boy, did I create the wrong transaction there. I actually communicated to this kid like a child, and that child actually responded. See, we don't get to choose which child ego state comes back, but if I address you as a child, you will respond as a child. In business, we see the withdrawn child popping up. At home, it's your angry child. And you know what then happens? The next predictable transaction. Do you think you stay here? No. If we go back to the old man, if that interaction continued, what are the chances of the old man swinging down to the angry child? And now we got angry child to angry child. It's kind of what the dinner table looks like. Why the hell's the salt all the way down there? I didn't freaking set the table. Don't freaking speak to me like that, move. Right? And you wonder why we have such conflict, all because of an inability to communicate, because I don't recognize the type of personality that sits in front of me, or even more importantly, I don't follow the rule of Pratt, which is I could actually communicate to this kid way differently. Hey, buddy, can I ask you some questions? Sure. I noticed you're eating a big bag of candy. Do you always eat so much candy like this? Have you ever thought about maybe sort of the health effects and the negative sort of outcomes from eating so much sugar? Yeah. Well, I noticed you're 10 years old, so it's probably okay because this is what 10-year-olds do. If I were to maybe share with you that maybe sort of slow it down and not eat so much candy, would you maybe take that advice, or would you be interested in that advice? Would you listen to that advice? Just think about it, like all jokes, really illustrating this stuff, right? Like we're making this stuff up, but the way I communicated in that was I was intentionally speaking to this person to their adult ego state. We communicate through the use of questions, and my questions were focused towards my objective. Now I want to be super clear. We're not asking questions for trickery and Jedi mind tricks, that there are no droids here. We are not using this to manipulate people. But we're going to take what we want to say and we're going to formulate it in a question. And the one question I want to stay away from is the why question. The power of communicating as the adult. And when we teach adult communication. And adult communication, very simply, is formulating what you want to say through the use of questions. What, where, who, when, and how. And very powerful, effective, facilitative questions, right? For facilitating dialogue, for facilitating that meeting, are the what and the how questions. And again, let's not go barreling down the mountain with questions here. It's not like we want to be robots. May I ask you a question? How do you think this project is going to go? What would you feel? People are going to go, what's wrong with you? Speak, say something. But the way I want to speak is I want to speak to the adult. And the goal for Pratt is that if we know predictable transactions is that ego state will respond, then the ultimate communication path is what we call adult to adult communication. And all it requires is one of you to be the adult, not them. 4 rules for communication. This is what's going to help us as we're preparing for our interaction. So as you're coming up to these meetings, as you're like thinking about, I got to go in and interact with these different personalities, as you are going to have a difficult conversation, cool? There are 4 rules to follow. Rule number 1, we want to ask the question, what do I want? And the answer to that is what we call your objective. Before I go sit down and have this conversation, what is the outcome of the conversation I'm looking for? What's the outcome of the meeting? Where do I move the relationship to? What's the exercise I'm trying to get to? I paint that picture. I get very crystal clear on it. I got to talk to Rob about his performance. All right? This is what I want his performance to be. This is what I want him to look like, sound like, do. This is when I want it to do. What do I want? What's my objective? Where am I going? Question number 2, who's driving? Who am I? And who am I is representing the ego state. All right, I'm in critical parent mode right now. I am a hammer looking to pound. I want to find out whose fault it is. As a sales leader, I want to know why the deal didn't get closed and why they're not hitting target. As a nurturing parent, I want to be patient and forgiving. It's okay that they didn't hit target. Maybe they'll get it next time. Spontaneous child, who cares? Let's go for drinks. Withdrawn child says nothing. Angry child starts throwing things and getting very reactive. By the way, I'm a raging, angry child, critical parent. That is, I'm also the adult. I've got a very strong adult. I've got a super high nurturing parent in my personality. I'm a wackadoodle, spontaneous child as well. My profile is excessive across the board. But if I was to say the 2 main types of ego states that drive or default in my personality, it's my critical parent. I need to control everything, all right? And it's my angry child. What I've had to learn to do in life is manage my angry child. And what's interesting is I could do it in all aspects of life, but my son, he just has to do the thing, and I, at an unconscious level, if I'm not careful, flip into that critical parent, really fueled by that angry child. My daughter, I don't, but my son, I do. It's a trigger for me. All right, not a trigger, but like there's just that dynamic. So we want to get to the adult. Sometimes we are the adult, but we want to be genuine and authentic to this. Who am I? Self-awareness is a very difficult topic because it requires us to take responsibility for where we are dysfunctional. It's my angry child, or even more so that I see it's my withdrawn child. I'm not asking, I'm not expressing, I'm not putting my hand up, I'm not sharing that I'm overwhelmed. The worst thing about you being a withdrawn child is no one knows that you need help. The worst thing about being the angry child is you're screaming for help, but people don't hear the help. Rule number 3, who are they? Who are they? Anchors to Pratt, people respond as treated. And what you want to remember about this is you respond as treated as well. So it's really important that we start to think about being aware for and how to manage some of these interactions. Final rule, rule number 4, very simple. Ask, don't tell. Formulate what I want to say in the use of a question. Now, what's the golden rule if you ask a question? Well, don't ask why, but if you ask questions, shut up and listen. Very important. And you know what's very cool about listening? Is you get to hear what the other person's position and thoughts and ideas are. Okay, let's do this. Quick little story, okay? This is a story about Pratt. I kid you not, I came out of a bar 25 years ago. Little wobbly. And back then, what was very cool was when you went out to a bar, you usually went with like a dozen friends. All right, you went out with a crew. All right, that's why you never got into places. They were like, no, we're not letting 15 of you guys in here right now. All right, so you went out with a crew, and at the end of the night, you had to get a cab. So we come out of a bar, I go for a smoke, I'm on the side of the road, it's kind of late Jan, early Feb, freezing, snow up to the eyeballs. We're from South Africa, we're not built for this weather, I'm shivering away. What happened next was 1 in a million, all right? My buddies go, hey, Witz, my head turns, I go up like this. I guess I was swinging my leg up and down, or I was wobbling on the side like the balloon people at auto dealerships, right? And what happened next was 1 in a million shot. This car comes driving by, I kid you not, maybe 90, 100 kilometers an hour, and my foot connects with the side view mirror and bang, kicks it clean off. Now this happened so fast that we're literally looking at the building behind us going, who is the lunatic that threw something off the building, right? And all of a sudden you hear, and I now see this tiny little red car with black tinted windows, all right, come to a screaming halt, and you literally heard click, click, and now there's smoke coming out of the tires as he's reversing. And I kid you not, I think, thank God my buddies are here. Thank God. Like there's 12 of us, all right? Who takes on 12 people? All right? Again, I'm not built, and I don't want to get hit in the face, right? So as the door opens, woof, this monster unveils himself, okay? Big head, throat tattoo, teardrop, full sleeves, all right? If you had tattoos like that back then, you were a scary human being. Today, tattoos are cool and fashionable and hip, right? So are mustaches, but that will go away soon too. He gets out with the club that you used to lock the steering wheel with. I'll never forget the sound. Pulls it apart. Mother ever, you're effing dead. And comes charging at me, and the side door now opens. Woof. And I guess his girlfriend or whatever going, no, 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 not again, Johnny, not again. Yeah, what do you mean not again? What do you, kill people on the road? Is this like a regular activity for you? And as I turn for my friends, like the movie Trolls, where like the big bad character comes in, they all become like mushrooms and little flowers and like gone, disappeared. Like a Disney movie, all right? Just psh, gone. And I think, run. Run as fast as you can. And I'm frozen. I'm like, and he's, this monster's like Matrix style, like slow motion stuff, right? And I just think Pratt. That's the first thing I think, Pratt. Just the adult doesn't want to hit people. The angry child does. And the only thing I can do with this individual right now to de-escalate the situation is pump his brain with information. I got to get that frontal lobe going, because this guy's probably thinking right now, I kicked his mirror off intentionally, and he's now going to kill me on the side of the road. So as he's coming charging at me, I stepped forward and I said, may I ask you to stop? And I swear to God, he stopped. And then asked the next question. I said, would you believe me if I told you this was an accident? And his hands dropped. And I asked him the next question. I remember this like a script. I said, did you think I tried to do that intentionally? And he's like, well, I guess not. And I said, would you be willing to like go and get a quote and we can exchange information and I'll pay for the mirror, I'll pay for the damage, no problem. And I remember back then cell phones and business cards. I was like, can I give you my business card? And he's like, well, how do I know this is real? Would you like to call my leather cell right now? One of those big flip phones, right? Right? You used to wear them on your hip. Very cool, right? You used to walk like this. Right? That's where the cowboy walk came in, right? And as he did that, I, again, went back and forth, question. Now my buddies come out, they're like, hey, what's going on around here? Right, perfect timing, guys. Anyway, I met him a few days later at Second Cup on Leslie in York Mills, because I wasn't meeting him at my office, nor was I meeting him at my house, all right? Looked like he just got out of prison. And this monster, again, unveils himself from this car again and comes walking over again, but he comes out with his hand this time. He's like, man, brother, I just want to thank you, brother. I just want to like Hulk Hogan. And I'm like, okay, my arm, let it go, right? He was like, I appreciated the way you handled that. He's like, I don't know what you did, how you did it, but the way you de-escalated that situation like that was brilliant. He says, thinking the whole time, I just didn't want to get hit and beaten and killed. That was it. Like, my only objective was to live. That was it. What do I want? I want to live. I say, what do you do for a living, by the way? He says, I work for Canadian Border Patrol. I'm an undercover agent. We do drug busts and stings and we bust traffickers. And I'm like, is that the reason you look like you just got out of like some Mexican prison? He's like, exactly. I'm like, where are you going in your career? He was like, this is my launching pad for police academy. Now, if you want to get into policing, if you come from backgrounds like Border Patrol, military, security, it contributes to your application in police. He says, if I hit you that night, done. I don't know if I would have stopped. He says, what do you do for a living? I said, I teach communication skills. Here's your check, goodbye. And that was it. And I've been telling that story ever since around the story of Pratt, people respond as treated. And if that people respond as treated. If we can de-escalate someone in that severe heightened emotion, which was angry child he was in, right? If I can get him into the adult, now we can start to have a very different type of interaction. So the ultimate thing you're trying to do is communicate in a way which solicits their adult ego states. So when we think about the child ego state and we think about the side of your personality being the emotional side of your personality, the feeling side of your personality, the danger in how we communicate and operate in life is we are literally forgiving or foregoing the adult interaction or the adult side of my personality. It's being switched off, or the balloon's deflating. And what deflates that balloon? Stress, feeling overwhelmed, uncertainty, lack of confidence. And as these things are deflating, you know what inflates to now come up and deal with stuff? Your child.